All right, let's get started. Let me just blast off and like dive right into it. We have Felix Biederman coming later. Okay. Hunter Biden under attack by deep state. Republicans are still not satisfied. UN report on Israel's war crimes. Felix Biederman in the building later. Get in now. If Felix is here, that means you're going to end up debating someone? No, that doesn't mean that. We're not doing that this time. Anyway, here it is. We blasted off. We're going to be value-taining with Felix. Chatters are getting ready to get on your nerves. Yeah. Have you listened to Brat? I really haven't. I need to revoke my LGBTQ plus status / card, ally card. I need to check it at the door. I have not listened to Brat. Certified Melon 10. Really? It's horrible. Please don't. I thought people really liked it. Nintendo gave it a 10. Wow, he's an ally, dude. Ally. Anyway, here it is. Don't tease value-tainment, bro, unless you do it. No, I think I'm gonna show Felix tomorrow's teachings. Need them to collab.
Jealous of that man. Hassan is everything I want to be, and it's not fair. That's all. I have nothing to contribute other than a vague notion of jealousy and lust. That's all. He's just rich and he seems super nice and he's smarter than me. I don't like that. You know? I don't like that. You can be the gay Hassan. I think Hassan is already the gay Hassan. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? In some contexts, I think Hassan is gayer than I am. I am so jealous of that man.
True.
Hassan is everything.
Facts. I'm glad that when I'm serving cunt, it's getting noticed. Here's a Turkish one. I don't think this dude is talking about me. He's saying, I hope you kill me. I hope you kill me. I hope you kill me so that they'll say my murderer was this beautiful woman. That's what that was. I don't think that's what that was about. All right, we got the UN report, but before we do that, let's do Northern Lion.
Now, here's a question that I have that I think is actually interesting. Can you be dom bottom? Obviously, you can dom.
Yes.
When you're on the bottom, but aren't you?
The answer is yes. It's called power bottom.
Psychologically topping if you're doming?
He thinks. See, here's the problem. He thinks topping. He thinks that topping automatically means that you're the dom. It's not the case. Normal mistake, you know, very common mistake. You can still be a dom bottom or a submissive top, you know. This chat is the dom boss region. Yeah, dom boss, you know, the area that Russia is liberating or whatever. I try explaining this to my straight boyfriend. He doesn't understand the concept and it frustrates me so much. He thinks topic is inherently dominant. How do I get my boyfriend to understand? I don't know. There's dominant women. There's dom women. You know what I mean? You can describe it as like straight women who are perma bottoms for the most part can still be very much dom. Bussy boy, don't leave my last DM on red. Alfarad Wall, what is your last DM? I have not seen it. Brat good, but I agree with Will that it's a 7 and 8. I think the best songs are B2B, 365, Von Dutch, Rewind, and Everything is Romantic. Morgue Pie could be Morgue Pie is like a dom. It's the same principle. Is this the start of a new era? I Show Speed? No, I Show Speed has always been Free Palestine. Like, he's always been a Free Palestine guy. You know? This isn't new. I mean, I'm glad that he's like donated money to Palestine, to Palestinian relief. So that's good. But like that in and of itself is not a new occurrence, especially for I Show Speed. I Show Speed has always been a Free Palestine guy. He always used to yell, Free Palestine. When he was 17, he was aware of what the Palestinians are going through. Give him his flowers. Look, here.
Israel?
Yes.
Freedom Palestine?
No.
We are from Israel, bro. You know who I believe in? What? Allah Akbar. Israel got to free Palestine first. Wait, what do you mean? They got to free Palestine first. Hey, free Palestine! Free Palestine, you piece of
Palestine, I am Arabic, you
free Palestine! Shut up! Where you from?
Me, I'm from Palestine.
Oh, you from Palestine? Yo, hey, yo, just build up the free Palestinians in the chat. So you're Muslim?
Allahu Akbar.
Allah! It is real! Real! Free Palestine, man. Hey, where y'all from?
Israel, man.
Hey, bro, play a beat. I say, free Palestine, boy, you need to do it. Israel is the country that you really need to do it. Don't interrupt my rap. Free Palestine, that's what you need to do that. Yeah, bro. Where you live?
I live in Israel.
Free Palestine, man. Hey, y'all from Israel?
He's just like extremely rare SPW. He's always been very consistently free Palestine on this issue. I don't know why. I don't know who like got to him first, because like it's not like he has well investigated, deeply held convictions on geopolitical concepts. You know what I mean? He's not someone got to him early on, because he's been saying this since he was like 17. It could be Cristiano Ronaldo, maybe. I don't know. Is Cristiano Ronaldo pro-Palestine? Is that what it is? That probably is why. Bro watched Abby Martin at a random 3 a.m. and got awoken? No, dude. No, absolutely not. No, y'all are on crack cocaine. Rainbow played Geo with Speed yesterday. He's so hard to coordinate with. Bro, y'all are insane if you think that he like read something or even watched a YouTube video that opened his eyes or whatever. Okay, he saw Amy Goodman. He watched a Democracy Now! Report. And he was like, man, free Palestine, man. Yeah, sure. Someone must have talked to him about it.
Yeah. Free Palestine! It ain't funny. Free Palestine. Yo, what's good? You're from Israel?
Yeah.
Hey, bro, free Palestine, my man, all right? Free Palestine, bro. Everybody chest to be on free Palestine, bro. Where are you from?
Even the fact that he says Palestine, or sometimes he even says Philistine, which is like he had to have an Arab dude explain this to him, like, or just like describe the situation to him. Like he had to have like a dude that he knows that's like Palestinian or some shit. Chunks talked to him about it. Who's Chunks?
I'm from Israel.
Hey, free Palestine!
No, we need to make peace in the love. You know, it's no free Palestine, no free
Palestine!
He said, no, we need to make peace. He's like, no, free Palestine. Chunks is a friend of Nico. My money on Zach Fox. Yeah, some of you guys are so fucking busted in your brains that you think that like he talked to Zach Fox. Like, yeah, dude. No, it's infinitely more likely what Chad is saying about the YouTuber Chunks or whatever. Okay. I know you had a major role in this. I wouldn't say I had a major role in this, but I had a decently sized role in this.
Today I sold my company and I made $2.
But I mean, it's not like I convinced him. He came up with this all on his own. Ludwig turning his company into a cooperative. This is something that he revealed already. I don't know why. I guess he made like a recent video or something, right?
Let me explain. I made this company a year ago called Off-Brand, and the goal was to make cool events for creators, which is exactly what we did. We made this event for Doug, and we also produced the Streamer Awards. We even opened up a game publishing company with this guy, and our first game comes out later this year. So why did I sell it, and why did I only make $2? And to answer that question, I have to show you who I sold the company to. It's all these people right here. Those are the employees at Off-Brand, the people who get the work done, who produce events and talk the game.
Tax avoidance scheme, dude, come on, brother. Jesus Christ. There's literally this goes to show I'm willing to bet that like since he did this, people are gonna fucking shit on him. Because like you can't do a good thing ever, okay? No good deed goes unpunished. People will start being like, oh, I must be doing it for tax reasons or whatever. Like
game devs and everything in between. And I sold them all my ownership for literally pennies. So now it's employee owned. It's also known as a co-op. Basically, the people who work at the company get to make the decisions on what happens with the company. And I still work there. I just don't own everything, and I can't sell the company to like Amazon for millions of dollars later on. And don't get me wrong, money's cool, but I feel like when you've made enough to spend $4,000 on a tungsten cube without batting an eye, you're pretty set. And what matters a lot more to me is making a company that people love to work at and hopefully will last long after I'm gone. I got some big news, because today I...
Yeah, Lud's a good dude. You guys know this. You guys know I am an advocate, aside from all the memes. Anyway, okay, we can't call him MAGA Mail anymore. Nah, don't worry. MAGA Mail is still MAGA Mail. It's no longer Mao Mail. Why don't co-ops ever succeed? Yeah, totally. Famously, all the cooperative corporations are failing left and right. No, the only reason why you don't know about it is because there's a shit ton of co-ops that are currently in existence and have existed for years and years and years and years. They just, nobody ever talks about them as cooperations or cooperative corporations. Like, and I'm not even talking about Mondragon. Like, there are a shit ton of random companies that are cooperatively owned that you don't even think about. And there's different kinds of, there are different kinds of cooperative formations beyond like the regular old like one person one vote type structures that they have. Yeah, Inco Foods, that's the one I was thinking of. That's a great example. DP Electric in Arizona is employee owned and thriving. Ocean Spray is a cooperative corporation. A lot of people literally do not understand that cooperative corporations are all around them. They don't have to be directly owned and operated by rugged, diehard communists at all. Okay? It's just that people don't know about it. People don't talk about it too much. It doesn't necessarily matter. A farm in my Republican town is a city co-op. Yeah. Genuine question: what's the difference between a unionized business and a co-op? I asked because I thought REI was a co-op. But apparently they're union busting. Yeah, I didn't mention REI because I don't think REI is a co-op. Valve originally was a cooperative corporation when it was first created. So cooperative corporations can be structured in many different ways, but obviously the major point of it is profit sharing, or at least having a voice in the profit sharing structure. So the company is not turning profit necessarily, but more so having every worker that plays a role in the generation of the revenue have a say in what to do with the extra revenue. That could mean that people get together and democratically vote to take those profits, you know, the additional revenue generated, and say, hey, we want to take a massive company vacation. We want to get better pay. We want to get higher pay. We want to get less. We want to get more time off. Or they can democratically vote on marketing initiatives that they want to participate in order to grow the company. They want to, you know, things of that nature. Ultimately, it's basically a different form of having more democracy in the workplace. That's it. Yeah, cooperatives perform pretty well. As a matter of fact, worker productivity goes up, whereas this job satisfaction is pretty high. Companies are way more stable when they are not in the business of simply engaging in improving profit margins for a select number of shareholders. Ugopnik Twitch, thank you for the raid. The sad truth: Hasanabi, the U.S. and Israel have a beyond strategic alliance, sharing intelligence through Five Eyes plus beyond, plus military cooperation, diplomatic support, promoting stability and security in the Middle East and globally. So who's saying no to the ceasefire? The alliance. Promoting stability and security in the Middle East is funny. TikTok N-word girl is having her parade raided on by other Nazis on Twitter, calling her a Jewish op, and she's doing heavy defense to try to prove she's a real Nazi like them. I love that. That's awesome. That's great. That sounds about right. Hassan basketball picks is clearly more important. What the fuck is this? Anyway. Cooperative resources. If cooperative is based on selling products or services, a part of finance comes from the profits that they get from their activities, proceeds from assets, balance sheet assets, financial grants, donations, crowdfunding, foundations, and government financing. It's a major part of this. But overall, where was the economic performance? In general terms, research shows that productivity in workers' cooperatives is higher than in conventional firms. For example, et al. 2012 shows that in several industries, conventional firms would produce more with their current levels of employment and capital when they adopted an employee-owned firm's way of organizing. One explanation is that commitment to the cause causes more productivity. The fact that employees can participate in decision-making motivates them to be more involved in the objectives of the cooperative. You are going to feel Central Committee raid. What is happening? I'm getting raided left and right today. What the Okay, first Ugopnik, now Central Committee raid. What the hell? Another explanation is that the collective work environment enhances job satisfaction, thus augmenting productivity. Research has shown that collectivists working in simulated collectivist cultures do in fact produce more cooperative behavior than do individual, i.e. those low in collectivism in these cultures. Furthermore, It has been argued that the collectivist ideological commitment to the group members yields higher level of motivation. Consequently, in addition to making turnover less likely, high collectivism in the WC environment should translate to high performance. They also have a lot more stability in terms of the economic downturns and the shocks that occur in the regular marketplace. Obviously, cooperatives are not like socialism or anything like that, but it is definitely closer to socialization. It is inherently anti-capitalist. How does co-ops work with huge companies? Like, not every worker could possibly have their voices heard. Do they like representatives then? Yes. The managerial structure in a cooperative corporation works similar to a union in the sense that you actually vote for your representative rather than have a representative assigned to you that shares the interests of the owners. That is how you do it. The administrative duties are democratically voted on. How are co-ops anti-capitalist? It can function inside of capitalism, can it not? Yes. But co-ops are anti-capitalist in the same way that labor unions can be anti-capitalist. In the purest sense of the word, it is against the interests of capital owners. Any kind of initiative, any kind of movement that takes away the decision-making power and makes a more egalitarian process, a more democratic process in the workplace, which is inherently authoritarian. As you guys know, it is basically a dictatorship. That's what it is. Corporations are a dictatorship. Anything that makes that process more democratic, anything that gives workers more of a say is inherently anti-capitalist. That is how it is. It's about assigning agency to labor instead of arbitrary owners by making labor the owners. Yes, it is. Anything that moves the control of the means of production in the direction of labor would be inherently anti-capitalist. Co-ops aren't anti-capitalist. It's just an ownership structure. Shaking my head. It's even more capitalist in my opinion, because why work only 40 hours when you own the company? And if you don't do 80 hours and pressure others to do that, then it might fail. What are you talking about? That's every business. I don't know what you're seeing in there that you think you understanding. I love when a guy comes in here and literally a guy comes in here and has like baby anarchy takes about how like work should operate, and then turns around and explains to me something that I definitely understand that they definitely do not understand. I like that you said cooperatives are identical to just giving shares to the workers. Yeah, dude. You were talking about balance sheets. Every business has those. You were saying co-ops only have that? What? No. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think you're misunderstanding what I was saying. What you do with the additional revenue at the end of a work year, okay, at the end of a quarter, or at the end of like a fiscal year, right? What you do with that revenue in a normal corporation, in a capitalist corporation, is assigned by a group of individuals that are oftentimes elected or appointed to a board that has a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. Shareholders are unaccountable, unelected, just people with capital that have purchased shares of a corporation. Okay? Those people are not working in most of the circumstances. They're not working on the assembly line at all. They have no connection to the company beyond the capital investment. Okay? Cooperative corporations take away that ownership away from random shareholders and give it back to the actual workers that are participating in the generation of revenue. What does this chatter POV have to do with anarchism? You know, most trade unionists and syndicalists are anarchists, right? I was just simply making a joke about anarchities being like anti-work and thinking that like being anti-capitalist means like nobody works ever. Communist take. Anyone can invest in corporations no matter the capital. That's right, initial public offering. That's why you actually get to have a say on Boeing, right? You own shares after all. I'm sure that they will listen to your opinion, except you don't work there. And even if you did work there and still own shares of the company, it would not be a managing share at all. You would have no say whatsoever. That is not how that structure operates. That is not supposed to be like that. You're not on the board. Your interests are only met if you're marginally improving if your returns on your initial investment are getting marginally better year over year, but ultimately you have no say in the direction of the company. But it's wonderful that you think you're on the team. It's like thinking a pizza party means that the company cares about you, because after all, they told you that you are just like a family, and that's why you mustn't unionize. Would co-ops have to set their price point higher to distribute the new profits of labor, or do they just distribute the existing profits more? They distribute the existing profits more. They can also, again, set their price point higher as well if they chose to do so. It operates in the same way that a regular company operates. It's just that the decision-making structure is more democratic rather than authoritarian. That's it. And it's not simply just about shares. It's not simply just about having an ownership over the shares. It's about having ownership over the means of production, being able to have a say in the direction of the company in a democratic fashion, of course. A big mistake that many people have with cooperative corporations is that they cannot let go of the capitalist way of thinking. They cannot let go of the notion that a corporation, no matter what, is always going to have one person who is in charge of everything, which is why people automatically will always say, oh, you want the janitor to be the CEO? No, that's not how that works at all. It's not about having one guy make all the decisions. Okay? It's not about having one guy make all the decisions. It's about a person making decisions about their own immediate workplace and bringing those decisions to their higher ups to democratically organize around it. It's about democratizing the workplace. For example, if Boeing, for example, had a cooperative structure, the decision making would not be coming from the top down, specifically in the interests of cost cutting initiatives, outsourcing to less regulated producers, and instead maybe they would listen to their engineers more, for example. In any case, yeah, a co-op answers to its own employee owners, not a board and shareholders who will vote them out in an instant for raising wages over doing stock buybacks or for choosing to make a better quality product or use better materials over squeezing every bit of profit possible. Yes. And the way this works, for the record, the way this works is that a cooperative corporation could still democratically operate in a similar way in a marketplace to be more competitive, for example, against other corporations. They could still democratically vote to engage in cost-cutting initiatives. They could still democratically vote to outsource certain aspects of labor. Okay? That is true. However, in the current way of business under a regular capitalist structure of corporations, there is no democratic association whatsoever. What? But I'm sure you don't care about us either, but that doesn't stop you from saying, love you guys at the end of the stream, lol. What? Are you okay? I think you're acting how you think most of your fans want you to be, big dog. Lol, you seem pretty awkward to me in the IRLs that I've seen, big dog. Big dog, big dog. You realize telling people that you think are autistic and neurodivergent doesn't make sense, big dog. Hope you get better, chatter. All right. What else was I gonna... Oh, I was gonna look at some thirst traps real quick. I have to pee, and then we'll get to some serious news. Is it on your favorite? Hasanabi W or Stray?
Oh my god! Oh my god.
What? I feel like this looks more like Lolo than me. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if I look like Human Shrek. Do I look like Human Shrek? The f. What is this? Basketball streams every week. I mean, we might do more basketball streams. Human Shrek, Will and you having a baby. Oh, this is what I was gonna show you here.
これじゃない。もうここからはもう当てずっぽでいこうと思います。
Real.
これない。
Real. That's a real thing that happened. Oops, my Google Calendar got leaked. This is a come up. You got Shorty drawing you in Japan.
I do not give a f about what others think of me. I am going to make it. And that's a promise.
This is awesome. It's so stupid. Oh my Lord. Okay. All right. What else? What else do we have? New Hasanabi thirst stock. Okay, we've done enough. We've done enough thirst stocks. Okay. Here. We'll start off with some really cool Zionist versus Neterai card clips. I'm gonna go pee real quick. I talked about the Young Thug trial yesterday. You missed it. Hold on.
Zionism is a political movement which is causing bloodshed. Rivers of bloodshed.
That's where our family is from. I'm from Israel. How can you hold that flag?
This is because the actions of the Zionist people, they are responsible for bloodshed.
That's where our ancestors.
We lived in a beautiful peace. We lived in a beautiful peace with Palestinian people for hundreds of years.
How can you say that you're not a Jew? You're not a Jew. How dare you?
When Zionism
you're
came
not a
in,
Jew.
when Zionism came in, they caused their bloodshed. They caused rivers of bloodshed.
How can you say that you're Jewish? How can you shame your own people?
Who is a Jew?
We're Jews. This is our people.
He was against Judaism.
We're all Jews here.
Yeah, so how are they saying that?
Because they believe in God. Jewish, I'm standing it.
I don't want that.
That's our country.
And the Talmud says it's not our country like that.
That is our country. How dare you say that about our own people? What's wrong with you?
That's so funny. It's awesome how my therapist acted when I brought up Palestine. No way. I'm gonna run it back.
This is because the actions of the Zionist people, they are responsible for bloodshed.
That's where our ancestors.
We lived in a beautiful peace. We lived in a beautiful peace with Palestinian people for hundreds of years.
How can you say that you're not a Jew? You're not a Jew. How dare you?
Bro, I'm sorry, but like getting this worked up because someone is saying Palestinians are people that deserve emancipation means that this is a sick society, okay? Means that like being pro-Israel is just doing something to your mind, okay? And this is like this is what I mean when we talk. There's two different forms of propaganda occurring right now, okay? On the ultra Zionist side, the hyper right-wing nationalists, they're going with the narrative that every single Gazan civilian is actually Hamas. They participated in October 7, so they all must be killed. On the liberal Zionism side, you're hearing a lot of commentary about like, let's get the conversation back to anti-Semitism in leftist spaces, whether it be AO's talking to those ladies the other day, or even these, I was listening to, what's the podcast? Hold on. I'm going to tell you right now. I was listening to it this morning. Today Explained. I think it was Today Explained that had an episode specifically on anti-Semitism, like what it means, where it's coming from. And they actually had like a much better person than the person AOC had. Today Explained had at least, what's her face? A very, like a pretty decent person to talk about it. Hold on. I'm just like up on this. 1 second. Let me just see if I can. How do I just find the show? God damn it. Oh, here it is. Was that anti-Semitic? That was a day ago. They had Rabbi Jill Jacobs on alongside Harvard law professor Noah Feldman. Okay. And that conversation was infinitely more. That conversation on was that anti-Semitic on Today Explained was infinitely more open-minded than the conversation that AOC was having. Yeah, no. Rabbi, hold on. Yeah, no. Rabbi Jill Jacobs. I think this is the rabbi. Hold on. I'm pretty sure Rabbi Jill Jacobs is. Wait, never mind. I'm thinking of someone else. I think. Well, regardless, Rabbi Jill Jacobs seemingly was way more open-minded to the conversations specifically about, anti-Zionism, and yet it's still ultimately looped back around to it ultimately still looped back around to like many anti-Zionist conversations actually take Jews out of the equation because all Jews are technically Zionists, or so many Jews have some connection to Israel. That is the line I hear a lot from liberal Zionists, and this is also a conversation that many in my community have also asked as well. And it's like, Hassan, a lot of people also still believe that there should be a Jewish ethno-state. There should be a Jewish ethno-state, a state for the Jews. And how do you, like, these people are very progressive. How do you have this conversation with someone who is like otherwise progressive and wants a homeland for the Jews? And then, you know, you tie it back to the Holocaust and the many pogroms, the centuries of pogroms that Jews have withstood, and how there has to be something because there are very real fears, right? And these are two different sides of the equation. You got the Jerusalem Post also going along with what we just talked about, hitting the insane, like all civilians are fair play. And then you have liberal Zionists in the West talking about how anti-Semitism in leftist spaces is becoming a real clear and present danger. Now, the problem with this issue, the problem with the liberal Zionist aspect of it is that it ultimately is still Zionist. And the unfortunate reality is that, like, whether what you want to believe what Zionism is and what Zionism actually is are at odds. Okay. And if you are otherwise a progressive person, you can't maintain this belief that, you know, there has to be a ethno-state. There has to be a Jewish ethno-state in this region built on top of, you know, indigenous homelands of the Palestinian population. That is always going to be violent. There is no non-violent, peaceful, non-confrontational way of creating this ethno-state and maintaining it, right? And that's an issue. The unfortunate reality of the matter is, no matter how progressive you are, if you still have this hang up born out of so much social conditioning from birth early on, you know, and if you can't overcome this hang up, if you can't like reconstruct the way that you understand Israel, reconstruct your allegiances that you might have to Israel, and also re-examine your relationship with Israel, ultimately you're still in the defense of. Ultimately, you are still engaging in some way, shape, or form of the defense of an otherwise ethno-nationalist supremacist ideology. Okay? And that's important to address. Not every flavor of Zionism is the same, obviously. But having said that, even if you have liberal Zionist friends, this is something that you should try to communicate to them in the kindest ways possible, which is that ultimately liberalism or progressivism and Zionism are at odds with one another because Zionism is an ethno-nationalist project. That's something to consider. Letter to the New York Times on Palestine 1948. The undersigned therefore take this means of publicly presenting a few salient facts concerning Bain and his party and urging the concerned not to support this latest manifestation. It's the Einstein letter you're talking about. Yeah. Albert Einstein's letter to the New York Times, December 4th, 1948, New Palestine Party, visit of Menachem Begin, and the aims of the political movement discussed. The way I see it, and I'm not very successful at having this conversation with my Jewish Zionist friends, but basically the way I see it is Israel is currently a singular, solitary state. It is a state that also happens to occupy a 5 million strong Palestinian population, both in the West Bank and in Gaza, that has displaced another 10 million all around the world, 10 million Palestinians all around the world. This in and of itself is unacceptable. That's why I always talk about how there is one state currently. It's just the state of Israel, and it is an apartheid state. I think that's why the term apartheid is a complicated one that liberal Zionists refuse to reckon with. That is why I always ask the question, do you believe Israel is an apartheid? Or do you disagree with the 18 human rights organizations internationally, including Israeli human rights organizations, that have correctly pointed out exactly why Israel is an apartheid state? Ultimately, you think that Israel would have conceded apartheid in order to combat claims of genocide? But no, they would never concede that, because if you concede that it's an apartheid state, everyone in the Western world understands that that's bad. But anyway, let's get back to the hysterics, though. The reason why I'm showing you this is that this person is probably not a liberal Zionist, okay? But the hysteria stems from the same place. And at a certain point, especially when 76 years of wrong has been committed, okay, you have to kind of take a deep breath and go, look, I can't have this conversation on what you suspect will happen to you. Okay? Does that make sense? Like, I can't argue with you because you are not arguing on facts. You are arguing on what you feel may happen to you. And there's not really an apt way of arguing against someone's firmly held convictions that are born out of, fortunately, reactionary opinions towards Arabs, Muslims, Palestinians across the board.
How can you say that you're Jewish? How can you shame your own people?
Who is a Jew?
We're Jews. This is our people.
He was against Judaism.
We're all Jews here.
Yeah, so how are they saying that? Because they believe it's our country. How dare you say that about our own people? What's wrong with you?
Oh my God, the baby reveal? That's crazy. She has a baby in a stroller, bro, while she's doing that. That is absolutely nutty. I think she's actually misinformed and not mentally ill. I mean, I think given that Zionism is a dehumanizing ideology that is about dominating the outgroup of Palestinians, inherently fascist, ethno-nationalist, the more you sip on that Kool-Aid, the more belligerent and unhinged you will become. So I would say that, no, she is definitely out of her mind. This response is not by any metric a normal response. Look at this. She's a right-wing actor. Update, not only is she not from Israel, she's from Mamaroneck, but also nailed it, a right-wing wannabe actor. Says gender transitioning is downright Satanism, and Bill Maher is the only liberal I know with common sense. This woman goes from you're not a Jew to Orthodox Jews to how can you shame your own people, while having quite the screechy little meltdown over her own chosen ignorance. Also claims she's from the Middle East and tries assaulting people. Solid acting. Yeah, I think it's like the fact that she was doing all this while she had a baby in a stroller is crazy. Watch the full episode on Rumble on my sleepers in New York City channel. Episode 3, Part 2, Gender Affirming Care in Minors. Mama Ronek is the baby an actor? The husband was showing off the Israeli passport. I don't know if that was her husband. I feel like that was a gay man chatter. I don't think this guy was the husband in the equation. I mean, yeah, no. You're being homophobic. That's her work husband. Bro, he's wearing a Madonna shirt and being kind of zesty with it. It's just two markers of a person who I don't suspect is straight. Not that it matters in this situation. Anyway, but yeah, on the other front, like I said, this is always a multi-front battle for propaganda. You have the Jerusalem Post writing, Israel must target civilian infrastructure in Lebanon. The pressure Hezbollah, IDSF says. Simultaneously, the government of Israel's official Twitter account is not just running with there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. They are now boosting the tweet as an ad. We need to talk about the elephant in the room. Many Gazan civilians participated in the horrific events of October 7. It is also reported that Gazan civilians held Israeli hostages captive in their homes. The world must condemn this in the strongest terms. I mean, I think we know why that the Israeli government is promoting this. Also, it is also reported that Gazan civilians held Israeli captives, hostages captive in their homes. Is such a funny way to say we are reporting this. It's been reported. Look at your mans. WWE United States Champion Logan Paul and Donald Trump go face to face. Oh my God. Oh, I can't wait to watch this shit, dude. Zion is trying to take back watermelon and keys. Yeah, it does. Not in the way that you think it does, though. It originates from Israel because Palestinians were not allowed to promote their colors. So that was in a way, Israel did play a role in that. You know what I mean? Bro, imagine watching, like, bro, this is akin to Northern Line being like, at the top of the hour, as you guys know, I serve a 3-minute ad break and no one else does this. Okay? And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. It's like, no, that's my thing, bro. Get the fuck out of here. Get your own thing. This is mine. Okay? Anyway, if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get one free Prime subscription a month. Yes, I am balding, and that is Northern Lion's thing. I am kind of stealing from him. Here's a 3-minute ad break now.
The watermelon originates from Israel, and they're trying to take it as their own. So that's why we're bringing it back to where it belongs.
Are you aware that they use their symbol as well?
Yes, they use it as a hate symbol. We always use our symbols as love symbols.
So the key, what does it mean? The key represents the key to my grandmother's house in Algeria and my grandparents' house in Egypt.
That's insane. Dude, come on, bro. Then go live in Algeria, bro. What the Okay, then yeah, go back to Egypt or Algeria. Like, what the do you mean? You can't be fucking repping the Israeli flag while being like, oh, I'm being like, I promise you, we could literally fucking put together a deal that allows a reverse, a reverse migration, 1,000,000%. That's crazy. The key thing is like, wow, dude. The key thing is extra fucked up. For those of you who don't know, keys are very symbolically important for the Palestinians as a symbol of resistance, as a consequence of the fact that all the Palestinians during the Nakba that were forcibly removed from their homes brought their keys with them, brought their belongings with them, because they obviously thought they would return once the purges were done. Many of them still keep their keys with them. The key is a symbol of the right to return. The fact that this dude is being like, yeah, my grandparents' house in Egypt and Algeria, it's like, okay, well then that's fine. You are allowed to go back. You can do that. This is not a thing that Israel, however, allows. Okay? That's what's crazy. Palestinians can't return to their homes. You could. You literally could. You could today. You would never do it because you don't want to live around these dirty Arabs, but you could do that if you wanted to do so. Also, the blue and white watermelon is extra funny because, you know, I feel like that's rotting. Since when? What do you mean, since when? I don't think you understand a fundamental concept here. Many people, as long as they abide by the immigration rules and standards, have the capacity to travel to these countries, have the capacity to live in these countries, especially countries like Egypt and Algeria. Okay? Palestinians, on the other hand, do not have that capacity. Weren't they expelled? Great question. Some were under very different conditions. Having said that, however, they do have the right to return if they would like to do so. That's the difference. There is no way of returning for the Palestinians, though. Because the reality of the matter is, 1948, the Nakba, okay? If the Palestinians were allowed to return back to their homes in the aftermath and weren't shot by the formations of the beginnings of the IDF, weren't shot by actual soldiers that were armed, okay, then this wouldn't be as big as a problem. But of course, Israel wouldn't be the Israel that you know today if that was the case. I like when a chatter says, "Since when?" And then I respond to them and they go, "I know." Okay, why did you ask then? That makes no dang sense. In any case, you know, there was another thing I wanted to show you, but I'm not. Wait, did I run it? Did I run the 3-minute ad break? Yes, I did. Okay.
And it represents the houses and businesses who was taken from Jewish people while they were forced to leave Arab nations, Muslim countries, Egypt, Iraq, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia. What are these kids?
This is the difference. Israeli Jews that originate from any number of these countries, and in certain circumstances they were expelled, for the record, that is true, could still go back to those countries now. Palestinians, on the other hand, cannot. This is very important. And the reason for, and that, by the way, is precisely the reason why this is just simply a talking point. Okay? It is simply a talking point because it's not like he wants to go back. He loves being in Israel. He loves defending Israel. They're not, I don't even think they're in Israel here. I don't know where the fuck this protest is taking place. Okay? So it is not exactly a similar situation at all. Is that even Israel? Yes, thought so too. No, it's not. It's London, I think.
Representing. And if the Palestinian wants to play the get out of jail ticket with us, telling us go back to Europe, I didn't come from Europe. My house is in Algeria.
Then go back to Algeria. What the fuck? You can do that. Like, I don't understand. But you're in Europe right now. So what the fuck is happening? Isn't he in Europe right now? What's going on?
You want to give me back my businesses? My grandfather had a cafe there, a very successful one. My grandmother had a shoe factory. I want their businesses also.
Are you aware they also use it as a symbol?
Yes.
What does it mean to...
They try to say that this represents their grandmother keys to a house in Jaffa or in Nazareth or wherever they come from. In reality, it's bogus. In real life, you don't start a war, lose, and then say, okay, let's pretend it didn't happen.
Bro, what the Dude, this man is of Algerian descent. That is insane. The Algerian nationalist movement had smoke only for collaborators of the French. What are you talking about? And even then, you can still go back, even if your grandfather essentially collaborated with the French, and that's why you escaped to France, okay? Instead of your countrymen in their understandable and moral battle against a colonial state, you could still go back. The notion that, like, he's claiming this was a war that the Arabs started and, you know, they lost it, sucks to suck, while simultaneously being of Algerian descent is hilarious.
You know, it's just one of those things.
And then the watermelon as well. The watermelon, I haven't seen it before here.
Yeah.
Is this new?
Yeah, that's something summer is coming, and in Israel, the watermelon is a staple. I mean, you don't go to summer in Israel without watermelons. I'm not sure why they thing that watermelon represented.
Do you know why they use it?
Well, I heard some stories, some folklore from the 60s about this is all Soviet propaganda. But okay.
Bro, he hit every marker, dude. I love this shit. He hit every marker. He's like anti-communist. He hit the Monty.
We just love watermelon. And watermelon is just a watermelon, mate. People want to have fun. People want to enjoy. You're not going to prohibit us from eating watermelons. You know, it's silly.
I don't think they're trying.
Yeah, what? You just made that up. So he's holding keys for homes business for checks notes in Algeria, Egypt, Morocco, and he's complaining about Palestinians have keys to homes in Jaffa, Nazareth, towns located in Palestine. In my opinion, like every case of Arab states is different. In Algeria's case, I mean, they had just cause for doing what they did. He pointed his finger at the wrong Arab state. No, it's just like it doesn't make any sense for him to say this, because he could literally tomorrow go back to Algeria. Okay, he could do that. He could go to Algeria. Palestinians cannot go to Palestine. Okay, Palestinians cannot return to their ancestral homes. He could. So he's making up a problem for himself to create a false equivalence and create an environment of perceived victimhood. Yeah. The significance of watermelon was used when Israel banned the Palestinian flag from being used. So the Palestinians used the colors, watermelon having red, white, green, and black in it. Anyway. Oh, yeah, I know the racist white woman. We'll get to that in a second. We'll do that in a little bit. All right. Hezbollah fires rockets into Israel. Hezbollah is getting more and more ambitious.
On the Israel-Hamas war and the ceasefire talks. This as attacks along Israel's northern border ramp up. Tom Sufi-Burge is in the region for us this morning. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning, Robin. Yeah, a major escalation along Israel's northern border with Lebanon. This morning, Hezbollah firing a mass barrage of 170 rockets into Israel in less than 2 hours. Another 100 rockets fired in late yesterday, too, according to the IDF. Hezbollah, that Iranian-backed group based in Lebanon, saying it retaliated after an Israeli air...
Before you say, if that dude has an Israeli passport, he can't get into Algeria, judging by his French accent and the fact that he's in London, I suspect that he also has a French passport, as many Algerians who fled the FLN had and were given, and therefore he could still go to Algeria, I suspect, with his French passport. He also was talking about Morocco and all the other MENA countries, which, if you wanted to, you could still, as long as you abide by like the immigration rules that they have, whatever individual country has. I'm not entirely familiar with every single country's different processes, but ultimately they would be able to go to all of these countries. There is no specific law barring them in the same way that there is no specific law barring them in the way that there is in Israel, a deliberate effort to refuse a right to return.
Airstrike killed one of its top-ranking commanders. It comes at a key moment for Gaza ceasefire talks. Secretary Blinken in Qatar after Hamas gave its response to a US-backed ceasefire proposal that would free the remaining hostages held in Gaza, including 8 Americans. Hamas demanding stronger assurances for a permanent ceasefire and the full withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Strip. A senior Israeli official accusing Hamas of rejecting the outline of the proposal. Israel saying it will only agree to a permanent ceasefire when it has...
Yeah, this happened after Israel killed a Hezbollah commander, the highest-ranking Hezbollah commander since October 7.
Dismantled Hamas. And guys, back in the north, Hezbollah vowing to continue their attacks if the war in Gaza continues. George?
Real threat of escalation. Okay, Tom, thanks very much.
My Israeli family, friends are convinced they can't go back to their family land in Yemen without issue or potential violence. How can I combat that opinion if it's incorrect? Yemen is an active war zone at the moment and is in the throes, or was in the throes, of a genocide and a civil war. So obviously Yemen is probably not the best example of this process, even though, having said that, there is a very famous case of a Yemeni Jew that I have talked about before on this broadcast who escaped, or not escaped, but had his family extracted out of Yemen. And then he went to Israel. He brought like a Torah from Yemen. The Yemeni government said that's our Torah, which I think is lame, by the way. I don't think that it's your Torah. That's ridiculous. Like, come on, dog. He's like one of the 8 remaining Jews in Yemen. Like, that's his Torah. Anyway, took it to Israel, met with Benjamin Netanyahu, looked at Israel and was like, I'm not about this gay shit. Zionism is lame as I don't like this. Take me back to Yemen. And then he went back to Yemen, and I'm pretty sure he's in jail or was in jail. So you could technically, as a Yemeni Jew, go back to Yemen if you would like to. Whatever happened to that Jewish dude in Afghanistan? What was his name? Zebulon? Was that his name? There's another Afghan Jew as well. As it stands, I believe the Yemeni Jew that I'm talking about is the only remaining Jewish person in Yemen. But yeah, Zebulon left Afghanistan and went to Israel finally. I don't know if he died or not. His story is very funny as well. There were 2 Jews in Afghanistan, and they fought all the time. And apparently Zebulon, the last remaining one that survived, straight up was put in Taliban prison, and they had to let him go because he was too annoying. He just kept starting fights. So the Taliban was like, all right, just go, do your thing. Is this a real story? Yes. There's a documentary on him and his homie. Yeah. Last 2 Afghan Jews fighting each other.
پارسال همه رو فدا میکنیم خوب آسان
چند نفر بودن؟ 3 نفر نه 2 نفر
2 نفر
اما شما گفته که خوب نبودن
این خلاص
شما گفته که خوب نبودن یادتون رفت؟
چی کنه ابو صادق خوب گفتن گفتی بشه از اون رو شما بیا چرا دو میزنی زولان دیونه شدی چی بلا گپ بدی نگفتم من به تو گفتم صدری دینی میگی بیا صدری دینی میگی بیا یه براش تار بزن کی دو میزنی زولان من تو چی گفتم من تو را
Old pimp
چی میگه من به تو برای تو کپی نداره همین دان اینجا شیشه بیادش فرسان کن
We're just a goy.
زولان دیونه شدی چی بلا من به تو گپ بدی نگفتم دان اینجا شاشه اینو یه سال نان میخوره بیا من به تو گپ بدی نگفتم تو دو میزنی
Debauched goy.
دیگه چی گپ داری پدر میگیم تقسیم اسرائیلی چی شد افریقی چی شد دوستی رفیقی چی شد من گویی من نصارا من گبر من ترسات تو خوب او یالا کار من دیگه یالا کار
I don't know if the translation is accurate, but this is but yeah, they were duking it out quite a bit. All right, let's continue. A wonderful story.
U.S. Secretary of State.
No guarantee that a ceasefire agreement will come through, says Blinken.
Antony Blinken came to the region to sell a ceasefire plan unveiled by the president and endorsed by the UN Security Council. Joe Biden says it was an Israeli proposal, but there were conflicting narratives.
That's really interesting because they say it was an Israeli proposal, but Anthony Blinken earlier today said something along the lines of he had a weak moment, I guess, and was like, this is the same proposal since May 6th that Hamas presented. Did you guys see that? I thought that was really funny, where they just had like a big homie had a moment of weakness. Hold on. Dude. Speaking from Doha after meeting with the Prime Minister of Qatar, Blinken said, Hamas proposed numerous changes to the proposal that was on the table. Some of the changes are workable and some of them are not. He argued the deal currently under discussion is almost identical to the one Hamas itself proposed on May 6th. It was a deal that Israel accepted and the world was behind. Hamas could have answered with a single word, yes. That's strange. Wait a minute. I thought this was an Israeli deal. That's odd. Huh. The reason why I think this back and forth and the media coverage of it in the Western world and the State Department officials and the way that they reflect upon the minutia of this deal, the reason why I find this particularly important is because I want you to see what is actually happening, and I want you to see how the media is trying to run a very different reality, a false narrative that they're presenting, backed by the State Department, when all of the facts show you the exact opposite reality. Why is this important, though? It's not just important to understand manufacturing consent here. It's also important to remember this when reading about the so-called peace process that many people have written extensively on. Because the entire peace negotiations process and the way that people learn about it here in the United States is damn near identical. The miscommunication and the outright lies presented by American members of the negotiation team versus what the reasonable demands that Arafat or the Palestinian side had made versus the unreasonable demands that the Israeli side made that they also went back on time and time again. You need to personally recognize that this is precisely the reason why everybody, whenever someone immediately says, oh, Israel never could find a partner in peace, in the peace process, in the negotiations process, the so-called Palestinian peace process, this is something that you have to remember. Okay? This is something that you have to remember. Palestinians are never negotiating in good faith. It's like, bro, what are you talking about? We're watching the American government take a Hamas proposal, stamp the Israeli sticker on it, say this is Israel's own proposal, while simultaneously we are watching the Israeli government itself directly say, F this proposal, we hate this proposal, we're going to keep bombing. And we're watching Israel continuously bomb Palestinian neighborhoods, Palestinian refugee camps in this supposed peace process that Israel presented. How strange. The only information we've gotten from the Palestinian side has been, we like this deal. We would like security assurances to make sure that this deal goes through. Most famous case is January 1st, 1979, Radio Baghdad calling on Iraqi Jews to return home in a Hebrew broadcast. There wasn't much demand for returning among Mizrahis at the time for a variety of complex reasons. There was always an internal conflict between the Zionist narrative that all Jews globally had been waiting to return to Israel for millennia and attempts by the Israeli government to frame Mizrahis as refugees in order to counteract the Palestinian right of return. Yeah, Avi Shlaim wrote extensively about this. He himself is an Iraqi Jew who is an Israeli historian. And his findings also show that Mossad... Oop, did I get it? I think I got it. Mossad participated in a synagogue bombing to escalate tensions and push the Iraqi Jews out of Iraq. If Israel's sticking point was the timeline on withdrawal and permanent ceasefire, then Israel effectively only agreed to phase one, right? They're only on board with a temporary ceasefire for hostage extraction? Yes. So something to consider when looking at the way people discuss the history of the peace process. This is what happens when non-state actors or non-American affiliated actors in any kind of negotiations process does not get adequate or accurate coverage. Okay? Then the sides that are more powerful can make up whatever narrative they want to.
Israel has maintained its goal is to destroy Hamas, and Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. Well, today, Blinken has blamed Hamas for the impasse. He says the group's response to the plan last night came with amendments and that some of them are workable, some of them are not. He was addressing a press conference along with the Prime Minister of Qatar, which has been a key mediator between Hamas and Israel. Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said a permanent ceasefire is the only viable solution for Gaza.
Hamas has proposed numerous changes to the proposal that was on the table. We discussed those changes last night with Egyptian colleagues and today with the Prime Minister. Some of the changes are workable, some are not.
Why don't you say what their demands are? Like, what are the changes that are workable and what are the changes that are not workable? Just say it. Why won't you say it, big dog? What's happening? The Baghdad bombings played an important role in driving Iraqi Jews to register for leaving in accordance with the denaturalization law. Whether it was done by the Zionist underground Mossad or other actors is not completely certain, though I find the evidence Shlaim presents pretty convincing. I've literally had to argue with people who think that Hamas is the one holding up the negotiations is nuts. Well, remember, due to the sheer arrogance of the Israeli state and the sense of entitlement that the Israeli state has, they very openly revealed their actual opinions on the matter with regular frequency. So you can turn around and point to a million different articles written since Joe Biden came out and said this is the Israeli ceasefire negotiation. Hamas must accept it now, and point to those articles to be like, well, if this is Israel's own negotiation, why the is there 100 different news articles about like Benjamin Netanyahu going back on it? Tweets from Benjamin Netanyahu's own personal Twitter account saying, oh, no, don't worry, we're still going to bomb Gaza into oblivion. Or Benjamin Netanyahu's own party, Likud, having Knesset members go out to the media to be like, yeah, this sucks. This is a terrible deal. We don't want this. What? Take a week off. They even went as far as to run headlines for this story as Hamas rejects ceasefire. Yeah.
أننا أعتقد وصلنا إلى
Israel's war on Gaza live. Over 15,000 children killed as war hits day 250. At a press briefing in Qatar, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says some changes proposed by Hamas ceasefire deal are not workable. Gaza Ministry of Health warns hospitals, health centers, and the only oxygen station in Gaza City governorate are at risk of going out of service due to a lack of fuel. Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad say they submitted a response to the UN-backed ceasefire proposal to mediators in Qatar and Egypt. Homes, hospitals, schools, universities, agriculture, the economy devastated, and the bomb still falls, says a UNICEF official from inside of Gaza. Hezbollah announces that one of its senior commanders was killed in an Israeli attack on Lebanon. At least 37,202 people have been killed and 85,000 wounded in Israel's war on Gaza since October 7th. This is that we know of. Now, let's go back here. Scroll down to 6 hours. Bro, that's too much scrolling. That's too much scrolling. Gaza government media office marks 250 days of war. Hamas official denies requesting amendments to proposed Gaza ceasefire deal. Hamas official Osama Hamdan has denied that the Palestinian group had put forward new ideas for the U.S.-backed proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said that Hamas had proposed numerous amendments, some unworkable, to the Gaza ceasefire proposal, though he also said mediators remain determined to close the gaps. Hamdan, speaking to the Pan-Arab Al Arabi TV, also said that Blinken was part of the problem, not the solution in the Gaza conflict. That's interesting. Now, even if you're like, well, how can you trust Hamas saying that they didn't actually put forward new amendments to the deal? Okay? If you say, oh, how can you put forward this idea? Well, here it is. Here is Anthony Blinken's own words in a moment of weakness, openly admitting that this was the same deal Hamas proposed. Hamas has not come out at all and stated that they do not want this deal. They have only stated so far since the Joe Biden revelation that there was a three-phase permanent cessation of hostility deal on the table. Hamas has only responded positively to this deal. And yet, the only people that say that this deal is only being held up by Hamas are American authorities. It's not even the Israeli authorities that are saying this. You want to know why? Until recently, Israeli authorities were openly stating they were the ones who were against this ceasefire proposal, even though they said it was their own ceasefire proposal, according to the American government. The analogy I gave last night holds. If you are going to a car dealership and you are telling the car dealership, the salesman, hey, I want this Honda Civic. Here's $30,000. The car dealership says the Honda Civic is $30,000. And then you're like, okay, set up the contract. And a day later, the dealership goes, what Civic? Just give me the money, dumbass. Give me the money. You get no car. We never said there was a car. That's not a deal. And you, as the person who is buying the Honda Civic, have every right to say, can I get assurances? Can I see the car? Can I get the car? The do you mean there's no car? It is insane. Meanwhile, the car dealership is no longer giving you the car, demanding the $30,000, and also trying to take the car that you drove here on. And if you say, what the is this? You're anti-Semitic. Shut the up. I heard Sam Cedar talking about it being written in the deal. Basically, Israel, U.S. could back out after phase one, after hostages are returned. Have you heard anything about this? Yes. The main point of contention is that Israel thought, because we don't know the exact details, but my speculation is that Israel thought that they could get away with like writing this three-part proposal and then muddying the waters after the end of phase one, after they extract all the hostages. But the problem is people want a fucking permanent end to hostilities. Israel doesn't, but the rest of the fucking international community does. So when Joe Biden came out and said 3-phase deal, first phase ceasefire, second phase permanent end to hostilities, everyone is going to hyper focus on that. And the legalese on this issue is not going to cause people to go, oh, well, Israel is actually playing fast and loose with these terms. And technically they have every right to do so. And they have every right to pull out of this deal. Well, that's bullshit. Then it's not a deal. It's not the same deal. Of course, people hyper focused on permanent end to hostilities and a ceasefire because that's what people care about. They don't give a shit about Israel or specifically Benjamin Netanyahu's interest in continuing the bombing campaign or the Israeli interest in continuing the bombing campaign once the hostages are extracted. That's ridiculous. They're trying to also make the non-populated areas bit apply to the corridor they built so they don't have to actually withdraw their military. That's the other part. Yeah. They don't want to evacuate the Philadelphia corridor, which is ridiculous. They don't want to evacuate the areas that they've cultivated, that they've bombed into oblivion, by the way, between the border wall and the Gaza envelope. So of course, when Hamas officials say, okay, well, where are the assurances? We want a timeline of how this permanent cessation of hostilities is going to work. People go, oh, you're sullying the deal.
We have reached a very dire point whereby it is imperative to reach permanent solution rather than temporary measures. This was part of our discussion whereby we are all seeking permanent solution to bring back peace and security to Gaza Strip as well as West Bank, let alone the peoples of the region.
Well, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad sent their response to the US-backed proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza to the mediators on Tuesday. They sent their reply to the Qatari and Egyptian mediators on Tuesday night, and while the exact wording wasn't disclosed, they said the plan is, quote, responsible and positive. In a joint statement, they said the response prioritizes the interests of our Palestinian people and the necessity of completely stopping the ongoing aggression against Gaza and Israel's withdrawal from the entire Gaza Strip. The Palestinian delegation expressed its readiness to deal positively to reach an agreement to end this war against our people based on a sense of national responsibility. But they also proposed amendments to the overall proposal. Those changes include Israeli troops pulling out immediately from the Rafah border crossing and the Philadelphia corridor, which runs along the border with Egypt. Well, we are live in central Gaza, the Jordanian capital Amman, but first let's head to the White House and speak to Kimberly Halkett there. Kimberly, give us some context for this. Tell us what was in that ceasefire proposal.
The ceasefire proposal that was laid out back in May of the 31st certainly laid out various stages that the U.S. president hoped would be amenable to Hamas. Of course, we now know that there are changes that Hamas is looking for, some that the president says are workable, some that the Secretary of State says also are not workable. And so
what is it? Which one is it? What's going on here? I would like to personally know what the non-workable aspects of this deal are. Hassan, following your car analogy, are they trying to say that the assurances Hamas wants are changes even though they've always been there? Yes. That is precisely what I speculate is going on. This is wee-woo speculation alert. Judging by the weird communication from the American side and with the open revelation that this is Hamas's own deal, I suspect everything that I know, everything that I've seen so far, especially the inconsistencies from the American side on the messaging front and the consistency that I've seen on the Israeli front in terms of wanting to continue the bloodshed no matter the cost once the hostages have been extracted. I suspect that my speculation is that Hamas does not want to change the deal dramatically, simply wants assurances and a timeline. My suspicion on this matter, once again, comes from the inconsistency on the American front and the outright lies that the American government has presented as fact. The mainstream media in the Western world has gone along with these outright lies, by the way. And Hamas envoys have consistently said publicly that they are very, they're open to this deal. They like it.
This is something that the White House is now trying to work through. But as we know, the main goal in all of this is to try and end the conflict, something that has been an ongoing challenge. And the other main goal in all of this is to ease the suffering of the Palestinian people. As we know, there are now 37,000 casualties and rising. And to ease the suffering in terms of not only ending the fighting, but also to get humanitarian aid in. As we know, this is a humanitarian crisis. So in terms of the proposal, what we know is that there are 3 stages, one to end the fighting, one to bring out the withdrawal of Israeli troops, given the fact that this is Israel's war on Gaza, and also to get that humanitarian aid in the various increments. And so this is what the plan lays out. And in terms of this proposal, what we know from the U.S. president is that each step and each increment is one that builds upon in terms of trying to get to an ultimate solution of ultimately building on something lasting and enduring in the eyes of the White House.
Kimberly, many thanks for that. Kimberly Halkett, live at the White House in Washington, D.C. OK, for more on this story, let's go to Hamda Salhout, who's joining us from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Hamda, well...
Israel was demanding assurances for this over a week ago, basically guaranteeing to continue the war after the first stage. Yeah, Israel demands guarantees from the U.S. We can continue the war if Hamas delays the completion of the deal. The limited war cabinet decided to amend the American guarantees following the fear that the cessation of hostilities would allow Hamas to smear the contacts and avoid completing the deal. Senior government official, the decision may delay the negotiations. Israel needs to strike Lebanon now, says senior contributing editor at JNS, host of the Caroline Glick Show and Newsweek columnist, author, speaker, mom, wife, dog mom. She says, Israel needs to strike Lebanon now, hard, before Iran goes nuclear. Biden's demands that Israel stand down is a demand that we accept our annihilation. To which Ryan Grimm correctly responds, okay, strike Lebanon now hard, because why again? What do you have after you have struck Lebanon hard? How does that help? No. Strike Lebanon hard now, question mark, 3, profit. Yeah, it's just, there's one speed. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And Israel is the hammer nation. Okay? They only have one speed, and that is total annihilation.
The Biden administration has very clearly and repeatedly blamed Hamas for derailing any progress when it comes to a potential ceasefire. What is Israel's position on it?
Look, Neve, from the get-go, not just in this round of negotiations, but in all previous ones, the Israelis have pointed the finger at Hamas, saying that they have unreasonable and, quote, delusional demands. In this latest round of talks, Israeli officials...
This is the only way it could ever possibly pass in the expanded cabinet, and even then, I'm not sure Ben-Gvir would allow it. Law. It also fits with what we'd heard from Zaki Hanegbi's leaked convo with the hostage families. Of course, Hamas would never take it if it doesn't end the war. Yeah, obviously. And then they can turn around and say, Hamas shall lead the talks. The problem is, there's 2 different problems. If you are a Zionist and you want this, and you hate that, like, Israel's propaganda efforts have fallen on deaf ears for the most part, specifically because Israel has been unimaginably brutal throughout this entire process, then you just cross your fingers and you hope and you pray that the Western media will be able to manufacture consent to make it seem like it was Hamas that sullied the deal. The issue here, however, is that regardless of what the Western media says, people can still see with their eyes and recognize who's the one who's actually ruining the talks.
have
I've been
said
back.
that the Hamas proposal falls short of what exactly Israel is looking for. Additionally, we have to remember that even if all the captives were released, Israel has still said that the war would continue no matter how long a pause in the fighting would be. So that means that they're saying until all of those goals of the war are achieved, and remember there are three. The first is to release all of the remaining Israeli captives, to ensure that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel, and the complete destruction of Hamas both politically and militarily. And Israel is saying until all of those goals are achieved, the war is not going to end. So Israel, again, pointing the finger at Hamas, saying that they are unwilling to meet Israel's demands, again, saying they're unrealistic.
All right, Hamda Salhid live for us in the Jordanian capital, Amman. Let's head to central Gaza and speak to Tarek Abu Zoom, who's outside the Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah. Tarek, there has been a frustrating lack of progress, I think that's the best way of putting it, in terms of reaching a conclusion to these ceasefire hopes, and those hopes matter most where you are.
I like that the conversation openly is, give us all the hostages and we are going to keep bombing. Okay. Also, this is called a permanent end to hostilities plan. It's like, how can you make this? How can you make the population understand this? Like, I feel like no matter how much sense you seemingly try to manufacture, people can still be like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? So you don't want to do the second phase of the deal? That makes no sense. Then you just want to keep bombing. You just want the hostages, and then you want to keep bombing as soon as you take the hostages out. That makes no sense. And you're refusing to give any assurances that you will not continue bombing. And as a matter of fact, have said the exact opposite. You've said that you will continue the bombing. That's not a deal then. You give us everything and we just keep killing you. That's not a deal.
Yeah, that's right. We generally right now following all the latest regarding the ceasefire deal that has been packed by the United States and presented for both Hamas and Israel in order to accept. But what we do hear from Palestinians is that they have a great sense of cautious optimism. It means that they do not want to feel ultimate optimism as multiple previous times where these kinds of negotiations have come and hit a dead end. But in contrast, they are trying to follow all the latest developments. They'd like to say that they are feeling the mounting American pressure and regional pressure on both Hamas and Israel in order to push deeper and to accept the deal that has been brought to the table that would guarantee an end for the fighting. But Hamas has presented some sort of amendments for the deal, represented and stressed on the fact that the Israeli army must completely withdraw from Gaza. Alongside, they must also withdraw from Philadelphia corridor. And for Palestinians, any deal that cannot really guarantee the return of the Palestinians to the north of the Strip, to where from.
But isn't this a good move from Hamas to give back the hostages and open the eyes to the rest of the pro-Israel people to show the brutality of the Israeli regime? 37,000 Palestinians have been murdered in the past 8 months. 86,000 Palestinians have been wounded. The majority are women and children in these casualty numbers that I'm telling you. Israel has also simultaneously destroyed all matter of civil infrastructure, including many sieges on pretty much every single hospital. These are war crimes. Israel's refusing to let in humanitarian aid to this civilian population. That is also a war crime. Israel has also demonstrated genocidal intent since October 8. Israel has also acted out on said genocidal intent since October 8. The numbers that I gave you prove that reality. If those that want to defend Israel at this point are not recognizing Israel's brutality, giving the hostages, and then allowing Israel to continue its endless military incursion, is not going to actually open anyone's eyes at all. Palestinian civilians are, in many respects, a perfect victim, and yet it still has not opened anyone's eyes at all on the pro-Israeli side. If anything, they have reaffirmed their commitment to how this genocide must be conducted, and how anyone that actually is a naysayer in the process is seemingly either A, anti-Semitic, or B, Hamas operatives. This criticism has extended all the way from, someone like myself, anti-Semite of the week, a couple weeks prior, all the way to Joseph Robinette Brandon, Israel's greatest defender. Itamar Ben-Gvir made inferences that Joseph Robinette Biden, the current president of the United States of America, a lifelong committed Zionist who was, alive when Israel wasn't even a state, and has demonstrated time and time again how committed he is to Israel's violent, bloody affairs and the continuation of said apartheid regime and ethnic cleansing campaign. That man was called a Hamas lover. I don't think people who are at this stage still defending Israel are going to turn around and open their eyes to the brutality, especially considering that it is the brutality that they want. Israel's giving them the brutality that they're demanding.
Where they were displaced would be meaningless and even baseless due to their ongoing hardships and challenges resulted after that internal displacement that took place after Hamas October the 7th attack on the Israeli communities. And from the Israeli side, they insist on going with the option of renewing the war after the end of that deal, saying that they are so keen to militarily and politically dismantle Hamas alongside with the ongoing and growing pressure that they would like to make sure that Gaza won't be any more representing a threat for Israel. So there are still big gaps between both parts, but Palestinians believe that there are still more ongoing efforts being made by regional mediators, including Qatar. And
if Israel are bombing them with the hostages anyways, then what purpose do the hostages serve Hamas? Maybe returning them would put more pressure on Israel from the international community? No. Israel can't openly and maliciously murk every single hostage. I don't think you guys are aware of how much pressure has mounted against the current Israeli war cabinet and the current Israeli government internally inside of Israel as a consequence of Israel's relentless bombing campaign that has killed many of the hostages so far. Even people who want the bloodshed to continue still are like, what the fuck are you doing? Get the hostages out. Since the northern fires, everybody in Israel is having a who's a bigger Nazi competition. Education Minister Yoav Kish suggested the totally novel idea of pushing all of southern Lebanon's 400,000 residents beyond the Litani River, which would be called Operation Litani, if not for the 1978 Israeli operation of the same name. Smotrich has another original idea, a security belt from Israel to southern Lebanon. Ben-Gvir takes the cake with, the time has come for all of Lebanon to burn. Good stuff. Did the hostages being there prevent the IDF from bombing like maniacs anyway? I mean, Hamas got nothing to lose. The IDF will look more sinister than ever. As Rafah invasion was so hard to defend, like many pro-Israelis, we are not looking for a shift in these people's opinion, but rather less backing to the IDF by other governments. But no, you are out of your mind. Do you not hear what our Israeli chatter just reported on in terms of like Israel's appetite for more death and destruction? What the fuck are you talking about? That is insane. This isn't even specifically saying like Hamas is greatly rewriting the fucking deal. You're literally saying, oh, if Hamas just releases the hostages in a show of good faith, Israel will stop being cruel because they've been so cruel so far, even with the hostages. That's insane. No one around the world is going to go, okay, they're perfect victims now. I genuinely don't understand. Hamas sucks. Yeah, well, Hamas sucks. Well, Israel is significantly worse, so I'm a lesser evil voter, chat. You guys know this.
Egypt to narrow the gaps of disagreement, but the grim reality for Palestinians as
if Israel invades Lebanon, all the world will turn against them. Yeah, I don't agree. I mean, the entire world could turn against Israel. It doesn't matter. There's only one country that cannot turn against Israel, and that is the United States of America. That's what matters more than anything else, okay? The United Nations, all of these other, the ICC, the ICJ, the UN, these guys are all simply vehicles for pressure, vectors for pressure. But beyond that, the only country that has motion in this process is the United States of America, okay? It is the United States of America. If the United States of America says, all right, you're done, then that's it. It's over. Like, the rest of the world will turn on Israel even more than they have so far if they invade Lebanon. Certainly. Okay? That will then create even more pressure upon the United States of America. Israel would in fact nuke every country, Lamau. Bro, how about Israel nuke the top of the hour ad break, which, by the way, you can also nuke by subscribing for $5 or for free. Okay? I think chat doesn't understand that using 2,000-pound bombs take out entire apartment blocks to go after two guys is Israel being careful. Once the hostages are out, they will just start cluster bombing random neighborhoods without restraint. No, I mean, I think they're already doing that. The goal is to make the Gaza Strip impossible to survive in. I'm half Palestinian, half Lebanese, and even though I live in the UK, my entire family's in southern Lebanon. I don't understand what Israel thinks will happen after killing 36,000 people in Palestine, then deciding that Lebanon should be next. They expect those who survive to just live with it and deal with it. Yet there's obviously going to seek revenge and bloodshed, and therefore Hamas and Hezbollah is back. Yeah. Did you hear about Hamas declined the peace agreement? Do you see the article title, the video that we're watching? No, Hamas didn't actually decline the peace agreement. If you read beyond the headlines, you will recognize that even Anthony Blinken himself said this is Hamas's own peace agreement that they proposed, that they accepted on May 6th. People don't realize that some Lebanese Christian fascist groups would gladly welcome an invasion just to remove Hezbollah out of the picture. So yeah, not all the world will be against them. Yeah, people definitely don't realize that like what you're describing already happened and Israel lost. So what the are you talking about? What does this take? Just because Israel wants to try out things that are seemingly new to you, chatter, doesn't mean that they haven't tried them out and failed before. Anyway, also, like I mentioned, here's the 3-minute ad break now. They have U.S. backing back then. There's never been a moment where Israel has not had United States backing.
We have been hearing from them they want only a ceasefire that can help them to go back to the north of the Strip, get aid, and at the same time have a kind of mitigation for the aggravating humanitarian crisis that day by day is getting much more worse in light of the Israeli full tight closure of all crossing borders and the prevention of the flow of aid into the territory, which had posed more significant threats on the lives of Palestinians as the levels of malnutrition are increasing, in particular in the northern part of Gaza, and families here are depending on all kinds of commercial products that are affordable in the Palestinian market. So ceasefire now is what Palestinians are urgently needing in order to generally witness a sense of calm on the ground amid the Israeli ongoing.
How are they weaker? They have better equipment and more aid? You mean Israel? I think Israel is demonstrably weaker than the Israel of the past. Their better equipment and 2,000-pound bombs have not exactly helped them with any of their military goals, don't you think? People think this is like the 60s. Israel is still operating on the virtues of their military conquests of the past. Yeah, Israel, the Israeli occupying force turned from a professional army into a police force guarding settlements and beating kids for 2 decades. Yeah. What do you mean they're achieving their military goals perfectly? 37,000 dead, more to go. The fact that in spite of the heavy bombing and everything that Israel has done in Gaza, the fact that there are still rockets sometimes being launched from northern Gaza, central Gaza into Israel, the fact that Hamas is still able to re-up their numbers inside of this inside of the Gaza Strip, and the very fact that they are still in operation in northern Gaza and in central Gaza is insane. That is an unimaginable L for this massive military. That's crazy. 8 months of bombing, 8 months of non-stop bombing, and Hamas still operates in the central Gaza area in northern Gaza. That's crazy. They haven't even been able to take out the tunnel structures to a reasonable degree. Now imagine fighting against a much better organized, much better equipped actual standing paramilitary, standing military against a whole country. Like Hezbollah is not using bathtub rockets, brother. And if your entire military apparatus is comprised of marketing managers and techno DJs that are reliant on the superior firepower that they have and sit inside a $30 million Merkava tanks waiting for the bulldozers to make way so that the tanks can go through, only to get no scope by a drone grenade or a dude popping out wearing slides and busted Adidas pants, dropping a grenade, avoiding the trophy system, you're cooked. Hezbollah is not using bathtub rockets, okay? They're not using sniper rifles that they made in a... They're not using fair trade, organic, farm-to-table sniper rifles, okay?
And unrelenting military attacks across the Strait Neve.
All right, Tarek, many thanks as always. Tarek Abu Azoum outside the Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah, that's in central.
Not only is Hezbollah so far, this is BM, I really hate you, anti-Zionist Hebrew. Israel keeps insisting on escalating the northern front, and Israelis are, of course, like, Hezbollah is going too far. We have to crush them. Flatten South Lebanon. Not only has Hezbollah so far been showing restraint and desire to avoid full-scale war, but also seems to be trying to avoid targeting civilians. Pretty much all of its massive strikes so far have been precision strikes directed at military targets or barrages on evacuated areas. Now, of course, there's one other problem with that. Given the type of trees that are in the forest region of northern Israel, as far as I understand, they are infinitely more likely, because they're way more dried up, because it's not the natural ecosystem, the natural trees that would normally grow. There are a lot of wildfires or forest fires that occur as a consequence of the bombing campaigns, even though the bombing campaigns are directed at military facilities. That's another interesting, ironic situation. So there are a lot of forest fires happening in northern Israel. Can't defeat an enemy that's fighting for a righteous cause. That's what I learned from my experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. To win a war, it takes heart. That's all I had. That's why I got my silver star, but most of didn't. We knew we were fighting for a lie, and that's why America lost. I don't think it's like that. No, I think you just can't beat an enemy that has nowhere to go. That's it. If you're coming in from the outside and you're trying to fight an enemy that has nowhere else to go, there's nowhere to run, that is backed into a corner, yeah, of course, they have no way out but to fight.
Let's talk about apartheid. For a long time, the word was only associated with South Africa, but more and more people are using it to describe Israel's treatment of Palestinians.
Let's talk about the A word. Amnesty International has accused Israel of being an apartheid state.
We call it apartheid because it is apartheid under international law.
Human Rights Watch has released a report that says Israeli authorities are committing crimes against humanity of apartheid.
But the Israeli government completely rejects the label. So what does apartheid actually mean? What did it look like in South Africa? And why is the word being brought up in the context of Israel?
For example, chat, you know how the IDF has the trophy APS system that takes out RPGs? Hezbollah has the Tharallah anti-tank missile system, which is basically two Cornets strapped together to defeat the APS with two rockets in short succession. It's not the same as fighting bathtub rockets. Hezbollah has legit weapons. The war will greatly escalate. Yes. The reason why Hezbollah did not push into Israel post-October 7, even though it was a direct violation of the red lines that, like, the axis of resistance had set forth, was because of the dire constraints that the Lebanese economy had placed upon the southern Lebanese population. Hamas obviously has a civil branch as well. They care about civil governance. It's a part of their job. And therefore, they have to make these calculations. And considering that the Lebanese economy is in the shitter for years now, they were like, we can't do anything about it. They are forced into a position of restraint in some ways. Having said that, however, if Israel does invade southern Lebanon, well, then that equation changes, because then Israel has brought the war to their doorstep.
Let's start with South Africa's story. Since the 1600s, the territory that's now South Africa was under Dutch and then British colonial rule. For centuries, you had a white minority ruling over and exploiting the indigenous black population, who were the majority. From the early 1900s, there were laws that essentially forced the black population to live in impoverished areas known as reserves. But in 1948, a new government led by the National Party came to power. They took segregation even further under a policy they called apartheid. The word means separateness in Afrikaans.
How they promoted apartheid to the South African population was that unless the white community was solid on every single aspect of segregation, there would eventually be a situation where they would be overwhelmed by the black majority.
Over the following decades, under the apartheid policy, the National Party introduced a bunch of laws. They covered every aspect of life, but were all essentially aimed at the same thing, keeping the white minority in power and the black population subjugated. One of the main laws classified people into 4 racial groups. Native, that was the term for black people. Colored, for those of mixed race. Asian, that was applied to people of Indian heritage, or white.
The Population Registration Act was central to the legislation because that would allow you to have a clear legal definition of who belonged to what race, and therefore you could begin to say who should be schooled where, who should live where, who can marry whom.
And rules about who could live where were a big part of how apartheid operated. Black South Africans were forced to live in rural areas called Bantustans, or homelands. These made up 13% of the total land, even though Black South Africans were at least 75% of the population. There were other laws too. Black South Africans had to carry a special pass if they wanted to travel outside of the Bantus, to go to work, for example, and were fined or arrested if they didn't have the right paperwork. Public amenities were also segregated. Non-whites were banned from certain parks, beaches, and transport. The education systems were different too.
You had your Bantu education, and basically this would be a form of education where they teach you how to do gardening, how to do cooking. They weren't allowed to, say, study maths and science.
There's a very rich literature on the Black South African experience under apartheid, and the overwhelming central aspect of that is the experience of being made a stranger or an alien in the land of your birth by an immigrant settler community.
Apartheid finally ended in 1994, but it took decades.
I support Palestine by comparing South African apartheid to Israelis' war on its neighbor as well. South Africa was clearly worse, right? No, dude. Israel is worse than South Africa. And by the way, that's not just me saying it. That's people who withstood the South African apartheid saying it. If you think the South African apartheid is worse, I don't know what to tell you. When people in South Africa who literally survived the South African apartheid literally say Israel's apartheid is worse. You want to know why they say that? Partially because Israel was aligned with South Africa, the apartheid regime, that is, and saw, oh no, I'm going to get blamoed. No, you're not going to get blamoed. It's fine to ask these sorts of questions. The framing of it is a little wrong when you say Israel's just fighting with its neighbor. Israel's not fighting with its neighbor. Israel has an apartheid. Like, Israel currently is maintaining an apartheid in identical terms of the South African one. So it's not, you know, fighting against his neighbor. So you're wrong on that front. But beyond that, Israel's also currently conducting yet another offensive ethnic cleansing campaign against the Palestinian population.
There was opposition from the start, with mass protests and civil disobedience campaigns led by Black activists and the African National Congress, or ANC. That's the party of Nelson Mandela, which has dominated South African politics in the post-apartheid era. As the resistance movement grew through the 60s and 70s, the South African government responded with violence.
You had young people coming together, standing in union against what was happening and so on. And during that time, you had people just murdered, being shot at, and so on.
Over time, the anti-apartheid movement also gained support internationally. There were student protests in lots of countries. South African sports teams came under pressure when they played abroad.
Feelings about recent tragedies in South Africa are naturally running very strong just now.
The country was banned from major sporting
events,
including
Whoa, dude, what the? This is anti-Boer discrimination. This is anti-white discrimination. Perhaps this level of anti-white discrimination actually played a significant role in making the public feel like they were a pariah state as a consequence of the maintenance of their apartheid, and therefore was very successful. So successful that, as the chatter yesterday was pointing out, the South African apartheid was democratically abolished. Now, the key detail here, and how this doesn't work for Russia, but will certainly work for Israel, is that South Africa was our ally, just like Israel is our ally. Israel is even more directly involved in American affairs than South Africa ever was. Israel is reliant on America to exist in the way that it does. This is why I stress the importance of movements like BDS. Applying pressure to the Israeli nation state for its conduct will cause the Israeli citizens to recognize that the rest of the world considers them to be a pariah state.
The Olympics. It was all part of a bigger campaign to isolate South Africa politically and economically. There was a UN arms embargo, boycotts, and sanctions. By the late 80s, major Western governments like the US and UK had joined in too. And those are just some examples among a whole web of internal and external factors that eventually pushed South Africa's government to change course.
Whilst none of them, in and of themselves, were able to overthrow the government, they were able to create a situation of endemic crisis which the apartheid government realized it could not get out of.
At some point, it became too costly to continue this racial segregation, and that and other factors then contribute towards this move towards democracy.
That happened in the 1990s, and this was a huge moment. When Nelson Mandela was released from prison. He was one of the main anti-apartheid leaders and had been locked up for 27 years for his opposition to the government. When South Africa's first free elections were held in 1994, he became president.
Throughout the 27 years, there were two different instances where the South African apartheid government went to Nelson Mandela and specifically asked him, "Do you denounce the violence of the ANC?" Nelson Mandela said no. The South African government said, "If you denounce the violence of the ANC and also renounce communism, we will let you free." To which he said no, twice, extending his stay in prison. That's also something that you need to remember when people talk about how peaceful the resistance to apartheid was in South Africa.
Another huge moment.
The people of South Africa have spoken in this election. They want change, and change is what they will get.
So that was the story of apartheid in South Africa, the short version anyway. The South African experience explains the root of the word, but the concept of apartheid has evolved.
For many people, apartheid means similarity to South Africa. That is no longer the case. Today, apartheid is a clearly defined legal term.
That's because apartheid has been established as a crime against humanity under international law. In 1973,
not looking too good for Israel, boys.
The United Nations adopted what's known as the Apartheid Convention. It defines apartheid as inhuman acts committed for the purpose of establishing and maintaining domination by one racial group over any other racial group and systematically oppressing them. And in 1998, apartheid was included in the Rome Statute, the treaty that underpins the International Criminal Court. And it uses similar language.
Is there a system of domination by one group over others? Is law being used to implement that system? Are there elements of dehumanizing the oppressed groups? And if all the elements exist, then the crime exists.
And in recent years, that conclusion that the crime of apartheid exists is one that many human rights organizations have come to in relation to Israel's treatment of Palestinians. They include Palestinian groups, Israeli groups, and two big international ones, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, who've both published investigations that are hundreds of pages long. The core accusation is that the Israeli government maintains a system of oppression and domination that prioritizes Israeli Jews over Palestinians. Now, all of them have reached their conclusion in slightly different ways.
Is America also not guilty of apartheid under this definition? That's a wonderful question. If you noticed, the timing and the moment in which they declared apartheid to be unlawful, well, and it's also a Rome Statute country. But yes, America is absolutely, racial segregation in the Jim Crow South is literally apartheid. It is. It just happens to be before the designation.
Ways, and they differ over exactly where they think apartheid is happening. Let's look at the map. You've got Israel here, and then the Palestinian territories, which are under Israeli military occupation, meaning Israel has ultimate authority over this whole area. Now, some groups, including Amnesty, argue that apartheid is happening in Israel itself as well as the occupied territories. We'll get back to that. Other groups, like Human Rights Watch, say the term apartheid only applies in the occupied territories. Here are some of the things they point to. There are 700,000 Israeli settlers living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and the Israeli government has granted them a superior status under the law as compared to Palestinians living in the same territory. That's how Human Rights Watch puts it. It's things like separate justice systems. Settlers are subject to Israeli civil law. Palestinians are typically subject to Israeli military law.
The Israeli military writes the regulations and the rules which determine how and where you build, how and where you travel, how and where you conduct your normal business, your economy, how much water you are allowed.
It's two different worlds. The Arabs live under military occupation, while the Israelis are enjoying the Palestinian land which they live on, but at the same time, they enjoying all the privileges that you can get by being an Israeli citizen.
Palestinians can't move around in the way Israelis can. In the West Bank, they have to pass through military checkpoints, they often need special permits, and are banned from using certain roads.
We have a Palestinian dedicated app that shows the route that Palestinians can take when they want to go from one place to another.
They also can't travel freely between the West Bank and Gaza. Even before the recent war, Israel had a total blockade on the Gaza Strip. And this is all part of what the rights groups call territorial fragmentation, because while Israeli territory is contiguous, i.e. it's one chunk of land, Palestinians have been pushed into a patchwork of territory. The Israeli organization B'Tselem says this separates the Palestinians into distinct groups, which helps Israel promote Jewish supremacy and thwarts criticism and resistance. So there is quite a lot of agreement among rights groups that Israel is practicing apartheid here. Less so on whether the criteria for apartheid is met in Israel itself. The Israeli government and others say that all Israeli citizens have equal rights, including Palestinian citizens of Israel, who make up about 20% of the population.
במדינת ישראל, כל האזרחים שווים בפני החוק, בלי קשר למוצאם.
There is formally a democracy, a democratic regime. Jews and Arabs have the same rights. They can be elected. There is even an Arab judge in the Supreme Court. So actually, there is some discrimination, of course, between Arabs and Jews inside Israel. But basically, according to the Israeli law, there should be no discrimination on the basis of race, religion, gender, so forth.
Others say that in practice, it's not so clear-cut. Amnesty, for example, argues that Palestinian citizens of Israel do face considerable rights violations, including things like home demolitions and forced evictions. And they say because those violations are happening in the context of the wider system of domination and oppression of Palestinians, the apartheid criteria are met.
People began to say, well, this system of apartheid doesn't only exist in the West Bank for settlers versus Arabs, but it's really part and parcel of the entire system of Israel in all the areas under its control, even though it is applied in different ways.
Now, the Israeli government has called groups like Amnesty delusional for making the accusation of apartheid and say they're fueling anti-Semitism.
Israel isn't perfect, but we are a democracy committed to international law, open to criticism. I hate to use the argument that if Israel wasn't a Jewish state, no one at Amnesty would dare make such a claim against it. But in this case,
he hates to make that argument. Dude. Yair Lapid, the liberal center, the centrist opposition to Benjamin Netanyahu, he hates to make that argument, but honestly, he's gonna make it. He's gonna hate making it, just like he hates Benjamin Netanyahu, but also on the International Criminal Court. He's like, I hate Benjamin Netanyahu, but the fact that the International Criminal Court declared him to be a war criminal, how dare they do such a thing? Did he say Israel's open to criticism? Yeah, Israel's open to criticism, which is why the Mossad directly threatened the former ICC prosecutor and smeared her relentlessly, and even urged the Trump administration, which complied, by the way, into putting sanctions on her and her family directly.
there's simply no other explanation.
Criticizing the government for practicing apartheid is becoming not politically correct in Israel. You will not find it in the mainstream media. Even in the academia, professors are very careful about using apartheid, but asking the question, is Israel apartheid, is more legitimate, yes.
Outside of Israel, especially in the context of what's happening in Gaza, that question is getting more and more attention. For example, some people are drawing parallels between the pro-Palestine movement and the campaigns to isolate South Africa during its apartheid era. South Africa's government itself is making a link. It referred to apartheid at the UN's highest court, where it's bringing a case against Israel for another international crime, genocide, which Israel also denies.
I hate both Joe Brandon and Donald Trump. If the International Criminal Court declared either of those to be a war criminal, which they were, by the way, every American president is, I would throw a party. I would celebrate. Okay? That would be the sickest day of all time. Now, of course, that would probably lead to America nuking the Netherlands, but that would be not so sick. But having said that, on principle alone, I would find that to be a glorious moment. I guess that's the difference between me and Yair Lapid and his genuine hatred for Benjamin Netanyahu.
South Africans sense, see, hear, and feel to our core the inhumane discriminatory policies and practices of the Israeli regime as an even more extreme form of the apartheid that was institutionalized against black people in my country.
So the label of apartheid is being attached to Israel. And in the court of public opinion and international diplomacy, labels can be powerful. Ultimately, though, the legal question of whether Israel's guilty of the crime of apartheid is one for an international court to decide. Check out our episode on the two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. Our full playlist of episodes is here, and if there is a topic that you want us to explain, let us know in the comments.
This billionaire thinks he can solve the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. See what he's planning.
The people of Gaza are not looking to us for.
I'm sorry, bro. I don't trust King Abdullah as far as I can throw him. Okay?
Damn, this guy's good.